Hi, Asa. How are you?
Hey, Kristen, how's it going?
It's going really well. Welcome,
Good.
everybody, to Struck by Enlightenment. Joining me tonight is Asa Alexander. He used to play football for NC State, and now he is an account manager at Josco Manufacturing Rep. So, thank you for joining me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So, did you come with a question that you've always wanted answered about life, and what can I do to help you with that?
So, I actually bobbled a couple questions around,
Okay.
and I kind of, one that's really, really near and dear to my heart is just kind of being an ex-athlete and going through some injuries. I had 3 ACL surgeries while I was at NC State. And I think it gets overlooked a lot of the time on the mental aspect of
Yes.
getting past those injuries.
Right.
And my question would kind of be is, how do you gauge yourself and how do you, mark your achievements through life, as you go outside of athletics? If injuries took away your athletics,
Yeah.
how do you kind of recoup and understand how to be a normal person again, right? Instead of having that long schedule of, wake up in the morning, go to practice, get done with practice, go to film, it becomes a lifestyle for you.
Yeah.
And some of those, getting out of that has been not, I wouldn't say I've had too many issues with it, but trying to understand how to be normal again is
Right.
is a process.
It is because, the college sports can be very demanding, especially
Yes.
NC State, because it's a very competitive football club. So it's not like you're just playing, for a small school. You're playing for a school that competes at high levels. And so the demand on you and the structure in your life is significant. And so you've got a couple things going on there. You had three ACL surgeries. You end up having to give up football because of it. So the loss there is significant. Living with that helplessness and the loss that goes along. I mean, injuries go along with football. They go along with most sports, but definitely football. And so you would anticipate the injuries. You just don't anticipate the loss of the game, right? And so that's one part in and of itself. Living with any permanent discomfort in your knees, if you have any, is another. And then the
Right.
third is the bigger question you put on the table. Well, bigger for you because it was the one you spent more time on. Was how do I adjust from that identity and that structured lifestyle where my whole world revolved around being that football player, showing up for practice, showing up for the game, competing. It's a year round thing, and then all of a sudden it just disappears. How do I then become more comfortable in my life working for Josco and doing
Right.
that every day, kind of whatever we all do?
Correct.
It is different. It's very, very different, and the competition, even though there's competition in other areas of life, it's nothing like sports, and especially organized sports like what you played. So there's a lot that goes into that. When you, I guess, the first thing is kind of the identity. Do you remember how you felt about yourself when you were on the football field and you were a player on the team?
Oh, 100%. I
Yeah.
felt like I was on top of the mountain.
Right. Right.
Especially at that level of competitiveness. Now, what I will say is some of that structure did help me when I got outside.
Yes. Absolutely.
The competitiveness is still with me in business. The loyalty, the showing up on time, being diligent, that stuff stays with you. And that's the greatest part about it. And that's what sports teaches you. But sports doesn't teach you how to understand what life is outside of sports.
Right. Well, sports are very structured, right? And in business is also a little bit more structured, but not even as structured as sports. So sports are very structured. Life is not. Life is very unstructured. Life is very vague. It's very open ended. And so you don't have any predictability there. You don't get to go home and practice and then go out and get it right. In business, you can do a lot of that, but in life, you cannot. And so, and I think that, even when you look at athletes as they go on in life to be an athlete professionally, they learn to stay solid in their career. But so many of them struggle in their relationships and then struggle in their secondary career that they need to, think of, after football does come to an end. So I mean, sometimes it's kind of a blessing that you're younger than rather than not, but it comes with its, expenses, that's for sure. In your when you find yourself going to work, you find yourself very structured, very loyal, very able to say, "Okay, this is what's expected of me. This is what I can do." When you leave that environment, what happens for you? Can you
You
identify
know,
any of that? So I'm not just doing generals here.
yeah,
Well, I mean, I
yeah,
can, but
well, when I do get to work, and I'm a sales rep,
uh
so sales tends to be very hodgepodge, and on a daily basis, I put out fires per se, quotations around fires, not really, but the structure of work is easy to comprehend.
right,
Um, it's once you get outside and kind of being able as an athlete, I
mhm,
never had to turn that off
right,
because I could be an athlete all the time.
right,
But
right.
as a business person, I can't. Yes, you could be a business person all the time, but like you said, it does start to affect your relationships. It starts to affect, how you to go throughout your day. And going, and talking about it earlier, I go to the gym all the time. That's probably what's helped me a lot outside of being outside of athletics. And just trying to help me understand, hey, look, I can still be the same person that I was, but I just have to change it to a different gear. It's not the go hard every day, the athlete mindset. It becomes more of a trying to understand, what do you do outside of work? Do you
In
sit on the couch all day long? Do you sit there and sit in your thoughts all day long? And like I said, the gyms definitely helped me with that.
Yeah, it's interesting because the little bit that you just put on the table is certainly worth looking at for a minute. When you're in athletics, you're constantly listening to the coaching staff. And so you're constantly meeting expectations and everything
Right.
is an external focus. And then you get out on the field and again it's an external focus. You're either, I don't know what position you played, but the offense is listening to the quarterback, your defense is listening to your captain, and you're constantly listening to whoever's up above kind of lay out the strategy and how you're going to handle each play and set of plays. So you're in that mindset of following the expectations of, you're told what the plays are, how you're going to set up. That's half of practice. I mean, the training is all told what to do, how you're going to do it. So you're living based upon expectations, and then the final expectation is to win. Right? Give it your best and win if you can. If you give it your best and you don't win, that's one thing. But if you're not giving it your best and you're not winning, that's quite a bit different. So those expectations are set in motion, literally, and you leave. And even though there are expectations in business, especially in sales, they are not so direct. It's up to you to find out how you're going to do the sales, how you're going to meet the quota. They're going to give you the quota, but how are you going to do it? They're going to tell you what you're going to get paid if you make the quota, and if you have a way of getting more and getting more, it's still up to you ultimately.
Correct.
And so it really shifts that dynamic where you're trying to meet the expectations, but you're trying to figure out what the strategy is and what the plan of attack is all by yourself instead of having a coach kind of lay it out for you, or a captain or a quarterback. When you get out of even work, now we go one step further and say there are no expectations. So now you've gone in your own life from a world of pure expectations to one of quasi expectations, and then home where there really are none. We do impose them. In all fairness to the way we do relationships in this country, we try to impose expectations, but that generally creates more conflict in the relationship rather than helping it move forward. Whereas in sports, your expectations move the team forward, but they bring the wins about. They bring greater teamwork about. At home, it causes more of a fragmenting. So it's really interesting that when we look at the athlete and how the athlete leaves the field and goes into home, we're looking at a couple things. And then on top of that, again, I'm going to throw this out there, but this is not your question. Football is a very aggressive sport. So a lot of athletes really have to deal with that aggression and the anger and that state of existence and leave it on the field and go home without it. And again, how do you learn to make those shifts? And then certainly going into business and then in sales where you've got that whole dynamic. Where do you
Right.
balance the aggressive stance that you're so used to taking with this balance of customer relations? And it's a little bit more of a dance than it is a forging forth, and I'm going to force this and push this. It's a give and take more.
100%.
Yeah.
And I'll agree with what you said. The sense of direction has changed completely.
Hmm.
Like you said, in athletics, you have a structured sense of direction. You know exactly where you're going. You know exactly where you need to be.
Yeah.
You know the expectations that are set on you. It's
Yeah.
to win. It's to compete. It's to give it your all.
Hmm.
Then once you get into the business mindset, like you said, the sense of direction is less structured.
Right. Very much.
You're having to kind of figure out, hey, look, okay, I can do this and then I can get this deal done. Or I can be friends with this person and maybe they'll help me out in the long run. Or but then once you get home, there's no sense of direction.
None.
And you kind of have to come up with that on your own.
Correct. Right. So you can feel really lost, especially when it's so abruptly ended. If you know that you're aging out, or you're Tom Brady and you've kind of make your own choice, right? We
Oh
should all
yeah.
be so
Oh yeah.
blessed lucky, right? But when it's so abruptly taken from you, it leaves you in a real quandary because you don't have that opportunity to morph into the next phase of your existence. And so you're learning it all on the fly and you're having to do that all by yourself as well. And so in the business world, it's interesting for you because you're in sales. That's really a very if you were working in a position if you were an engineer and you were going into the office and you were working on a project with a team and there were certain things you had to do, it would have a lot more structure than sales does. Sales has a lot more creativity and people interaction in it. So it makes it a little less, a little bit more vague. In you, there's there's that feeling of wanting to get it right, right? Wanting to give it your best, wanting to perform well, right? Not wanting to slack off in any way, but wondering how you do that and get the not the accolade, but the
The appreciation,
confirmation,
the confirmation. Yes.
right?
Yes.
Is that yeah,
Yep.
is that the right
Yep.
word? The
I agree.
confirmation that you're on track. It does where you're working, does it give you some sort of feedback like that?
So that's what I'll say is that's the best thing about the company that I work for. They've done a really good job on, you know, and I wouldn't call it a, pat on the back is a little, elementary.
Right. Right, right.
Um, but they do a good job on they don't baby you and say, "Oh my gosh, good job all the time." And I wouldn't like that either. Being an ex-athlete, we never really got appreciation unless we won the game, right? If you lose, nobody cares. So
But you share that with how many other men?
you share that with at least when I was at NC State, 140 other guys.
Right. Right.
Um, So then when you get to the business aspect, and I've really enjoyed it. I have only 3 other guys that work with me here at the office. But we all do a good job of at the end of the day making sure each one of us knows that we're doing what we're supposed to. And actually the way that our business is structured out, we all are considered a team.
Yeah.
So if let's say I didn't have the information that was correct for a client, I
Uh-huh.
could always lean back on, my coworkers and they would help me out and kind of help me through that situation. And that's been a huge help for me because in the industry that I'm in, it's not what I majored in.
Yeah.
So learning the industry was, I mean, it was mind blowing. But having those guys here and being able to walk down the hall and go, "Hey, man, what is this?" And they don't look at you stupid. That like you say, there's no stupid questions, but
Yeah.
they do a good job of making you feel like you're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important when it comes to work because I think a lot of people struggle with, "Am I supposed to be here?"
Right, right. Oh, thank God you're not having to deal with that. You're dealing with that, but in a very different way. The question is, how do I be here? Right? Like,
Right.
I know
Right.
I'm here. I know what I want to be doing, but it's so completely different than what you're used to. Do you find yourself missing football because of all of
All
this?
the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
You know,
Um,
that's a piece of your puzzle. That loss and that grief process that you need to go through is a part of it because we can find ourselves holding on to what was safe, what was familiar, what was comfortable, what we loved, right?
mhm,
And in this case, all of that is in the structure and the team, that solid team identity that you had, right?
right,
And you had a position. So your position was your identity. So you had an identity within an identity, and like you said, you were always a football player. Not quite true, but true, right? Like
right.
walking across campus, you were still the football player, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Once
yeah.
the only time you had to really give that up was when you were on a date or with the well, not even with the guys, but on a date and needing to break away from just football and open up to a more intimate relationship. But especially when you're in the throes of football, most of your friends are going to be athletes and on the team. You're going to move as a team, whatever you do and where you go. So, yeah, you eat, breathe, and live football in those years.
100%. And I will say that too, you made a good point there is my college career while I was at NC State, I never had a girlfriend or anything like that. And that definitely affected the relationships. Now, yes, I did, have girl friends,
Yeah,
but never serious enough to build a relationship with. And
right.
I do think that athletics had probably a large part of that because that was all that the center of me was focused on.
Yeah,
That was it.
yeah.
So when it came to having intimate conversations, the aggression and the football aspect of me wanted to come out more than often.
Right, right. I truly understand that. Right. And the more dedicated you are, the more you live, eat, and breathe, it's
Yep,
football. It's easy. And it's
exactly.
easy to get caught in that, especially in such a solid ball club. Um, So here you are. You're definitely not wanting to eat, breathe, and live sales. That's like, even the best of salespeople don't want to necessarily do that, right? So how do you how do you find that rhythm? I think the first thing, one of the things you have to look at is the loss, and we don't want to give up that loss, so we kind of want to hold on to the greatness of what we experienced, but at the same time we know we have to let go in order to move into this new way of living. And so the first part, is you've got to look a little bit at that loss and what's healed in it and what lingers, because there are probably some lingering pieces that need to heal a little bit there, and that will free you up to start to say, okay, I've stepped into this new place. It's like I've left the football field and now I'm on the baseball field. I sure as hell can't think football on the baseball field or I'm going to get myself in a
Oh yeah.
shitload of trouble, right? So
Oh yeah.
I've got to be able to make that shift. I'm on baseball, but because of the way you lost it, it's harder to leave that field and go to the next, you know?
Correct. Correct.
And so there's some
Um,
healing that can take place there. Not that we're going to talk about that today, but I think it's important, for those of you, that have been athletes, you know what it's like to hear Asa talk about this. And for our listener right now, think about your life where you can't put closure to something. You see how it lingers forward, and so honestly, Asa, even in relationships, we if we have an argument with our sibling and we don't finish it off, we keep thinking about it over and over and over, and it lingers in the background, right? And so when we don't and we can't, it hangs out inside us somewhere, and it makes it difficult to move on and do something different. So the first part is to look at how you need to put closure to that loss. How do I put closure to that loss so I can open up this door and step onto the baseball ball field, so to speak? How do I let go of that and step into this new realm? Play by a new set of rules, play by with a different kind of team, different number of men on the field with very, very, very different roles. And how do I take my identity and shift it from being that of, the football player to this new realm of professional and be the professional who I am today. And part of that is the letting go. The letting go is not the erasing, it's not the ignoring, it's not the forgetting. It's the awareness of what a beautiful time in my life. This is great. I miss it. I loved it. It was a huge part of who I was and who I am. But I let go of my need to be in that structure, and I look at where I am today. How do I let go of that? And part of that letting go is going to include your identity because you had a lot of identity wrapped up in that. So one is the loss, the second is the identity. How do I really look at myself as who I am today, and how do I rebuild my identity? How do I see myself as the successful professional I am today at Josco, in the same way I saw myself as a successful football player? Obviously, you gave it your all. 3 ACLs while you're playing football is telltale, right?
It was,
One
and what
ACL surgery can knock a guy out, but you went through
correct.
3.
Correct. And like you said, it came to an end so abruptly.
Yes,
Um, you know, kind of getting rid of that, and not getting rid of it. That's not probably not the right way to say it.
but that's how it felt.
Understanding that that piece of your life, like you said, will always be with you, but you're in a new phase now.
Yeah,
You know, and trying to comprehend, hey, look, I'm not the same guy that I was, 6 years ago.
right.
So
You're the same man, but not the same guy,
correct.
right? His bigger. That's good. We've got
Sorry
a little
about that.
snoring over here. Your dog's allowed to tell us the story at the same time.
He's telling one right now, that's for sure. It's probably the FedEx driver he's getting mad
Right?
at. Yeah,
Oh. So, yes, when you find yourself in that kind of a thought process, stay with it. Allow yourself to see, okay, what did I love about the way I felt as a football player? See if you can pull those feelings into who you are today, right? What did I love about the team? See if you can pull some of those internal experiences back up inside you and see where can I find them today. Um, all of this life is about the experience we have on the inside. And you have a lot of very, very well defined experiences from football because you were so passionate and so committed and so loyal. There's a lot that goes on inside you around football. So if you can use those times and just, ask yourself, don't try to push it away. Embrace what it was and ask, where do I feel that today? Even in a different kind of way. Like, where do I feel like the leader I was on the football field? Where do I feel like the team player? It's different, but it's still there. So how do I get there? How do I feel that today? I think the identity is one, really allowing yourself to work with the internal experience, really letting yourself just imagine that you haven't left sports altogether because that might be difficult. That's why I like the metaphor of leaving a football field to go to a baseball diamond, right? Baseball is 9 men, individual positions, individual stats, and yet they play as a team, right? Very different than football.
very
So
different.
baseball are 9 individual men playing as a unit versus football, which is 11 men playing as one. Period. Like
Yep,
it's just
correct.
one. You may have a different position title, but one can't be without the other.
Exactly.
And so when you go into sales, you've got the 3 guys, you're working as a team, you're individuals, but you pull together to work as a unit. So just see if you can use some of those gifts out of sports to move you into shifting. It's not a major change, it's a shift in identity, right? Like, how do I just kind of get over there? Um, so those 3 things I think are a really a beginning. The 4th is expectations. Be very, very aware of how much they have changed, right? Like leaving profession college sports, which is on your way to professional. It's really all so similar. It's just a different level. But when you leave that level of expectations to perform at the level you had to perform to go
Right.
into business where it is so different, there just isn't the structure that exists. So you want to really ask yourself about the expectations and what you liked about them. Remember, expectations are always external to who you are, right? They're coming to you, right? It's not coming from you. So it's interesting that now some of this has to come from you, and that's a bit of a challenge, right? So look at that. So funny. I'm gonna take a pause for a second. Can't speak with that thing. Okay, I feel like I sound drunk. Anyway, so let yourself really step into those expectations and how they have changed. Use what you like of expectations and see what you can do to create that environment for yourself. Because then, what you've done, if you can do that, is you know where you need the expectations and where you can develop it on your own. And you're going to know where you can't. And where you can't, you'll ask either your supervisor or one of the guys on the team, okay, this is where I need help structuring, right? This is where I need help defining. This is where I need help with my identity. Like, who am I? Do you like thinking of yourself as a salesperson? It because you know you loved thinking about yourself as a football player. If that title doesn't work for you, don't use it. Find another definition. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm using something kind of silly, but
Right.
but
No, yeah.
find that definition that allows your identity to come up because because the expectations and the connotations that come along with that could have an effect on you. And that's not where you want to be right now. You want to pull all four of these pieces together, right? And develop that experience that you need to develop. And you've got a company, it sounds like, who's really, really supportive of you doing that.
Very supportive. And to kind of add on to that as well, creating your own expectations also comes with monitoring your own expectations.
Okay.
As a football player, we always set the highest expectations for
Right.
ourselves.
Right.
As in business, yes, it's great to set high expectations, but if you set them too high and you fall underneath them, those can mentally affect you as well.
So in football, there were the expectations that were put upon you. And then you set, and this is going to help you transition to life. And then you set your goals that you wanted to attain. Okay. Goals are different than expectations,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So, as you use the difference between goals and expectations now in business and especially in sales, you set your goals. Now you're listening to yourself more than the coach, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
the coach sets the expectations, right? The boss may set the expectations of, I'm going to give you this quota of 100 whatever. Okay.
Right.
And you say, okay, I'm going to set a goal inside that expectation to hit 10 every week and then see if I can excel beyond that 100, right?
Yep.
So, but your goal, and you're not going to push it the same way. So the expectation is set by somebody outside you. The goal is set by something inside you. And so it's real important that at this stage you start to look at that difference. How do I set my own goals? And now it doesn't feel like you're having to do so much on your own because we always set goals. You go to the gym, right? You know, you want to change your weights on upper body, lower body, how you're going to develop. Are you going to do upper body? Are you going to do lower body? Are you doing a push pull exercise? How are you doing your workout? Okay. So that's all coming from inside you, right? You're setting your own goals as to what you wish to attain in your weightlifting, which is fabulous.
Mhm.
If you're working with a trainer, they may set expectations,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
And they may just change your weights to make sure you meet those expectations.
100%.
But it's up to you to choose to lift those weights or not. And
Right.
so again, it goes back to you and the experience you wish to have. So you're still pulling it together. So you were right with what you said. I'm changing your words to shift it a little bit because in life, it's real important that we move away from expectations and closer to goals. And those goals need to be something that are a match to who you are and what you wish to experience.
Right.
This is a visit. We haven't had her visit in a
Want to
while.
be part of the podcast.
She's a riot. She's just a riot. Does that make sense to you?
It does. No,
Does it?
100%. And
Does it resonate? Do you have a place to put it on the inside?
yes. So, and trying to understand, and not actually trying to understand, understanding, like you said, the difference between a goal and an expectation.
Mhm.
And I think that's a huge part in everybody's life.
I do too.
Um,
Mhm.
just trying to, because your goals are your goals. Your
Yes.
expectations are could
Put
be
upon
set
you.
by others.
Yes, correct.
So it's always good to keep your goals in mind rather than your expectations.
Totally. And if you set your goals as you did in football and you will in life, as you set your goals in alignment with your boss, as long as you're paying attention to your goals, you're going to either meet or surpass your boss's expectations, right? In personal life, if you're dating someone and you have goals and you're sharing it with your partner, then all of a sudden you have a team helping you define and meet those goals. So we spoke with Michelle a few weeks back, and she had she had stepped into this like crazy, crazy challenge. It was a 90-day. What was it? 75 hard. Right. That was the name of the
75
challenge. It
hard.
was
Oh, yeah,
75 days.
I've heard of that one.
It was crazy.
Mhm.
And it was pure. I mean, and if you knew this woman's life, I mean, there was like, how the hell are you going to do this thing? Right. But she read it, she heard it, she was going to do it because it said this is what you have to do. She was going to do what it said she had to do, regardless of her goals and her lifestyle. Right. When you're in football, that's fine because you eat, breathe, and live football. But when
Correct.
you get out of football and you have a partner, you have a job, you have a life, and now somebody's imposing a challenge on you that is so absorbing of your time and your effort, it's near impossible. It's not impossible, but it's near impossible. So, how do you push through those expectations? You have to ignore your goals. You have to ignore your experience at some level. And so, you have to find that balance. And in business, I think it's a lot easier than that.
Mhm.
Usually, sometimes it's not. I won't, sorry if you're, as you're listening to us, if you're thinking to yourself, absolutely not. I have a boss that like makes me crazy. Then, yes, right? It can be different for some people. But overall, in your situation for sure, Asa, you've got a situation where you've got a good solid boss, good solid support. How do you take those expectations, set the goals within, and know you can meet them? She couldn't set the goals within these expectations because they were too outrageous.
Right.
She kind of did, which was amazing in and of itself. But for you, you've got a better opportunity to really set those goals to meet the expectations.
100%.
And
100%.
I will say one other thing to you too: goals don't create stress. Expectations do,
Yes.
right? So when you make that shift, you'll actually find that some of the stressors are different. So especially the expectations and the identity will also alleviate some of the stress. You really want that identity to be matched to you and what you're all about.
And to add on to that, goals when you achieve them are, I mean, you feel 1,000 times better than meeting expectations.
Isn't that
Meeting
true?
expect Meeting expectations seems like a subline for what you have to do.
Right.
Meeting a goal is extraordinary.
It is. It is. Well said. Very, very, very well said. Yes, you can feel that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So when you step into life and you get off the football field, you get to
Mhm.
set your own goals.
Exactly.
It's more like the weight room,
It is 100%.
not the
And
training
like you
room, the
said,
weight room.
equivalenting it to increasing your weight on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Let's say I hit 145 pounds on the bench last week and I hit 165 this week.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a goal, and that's when you accomplish that, it like you said, you feel like you've done more than what you needed to do.
Right, and you feel it on the inside of you,
Mhm.
right? And that's your first step in really feeling the celebration inside you rather than waiting for it to come from the outside of you, right? And then make sure
Right.
you celebrate. I don't care how little or how big the goal. Going from 145 to 165 is a big goal. But even a little goal, right? Maybe went from 145 to 150, right? That's to be celebrated. And everything you set up for yourself, just keep celebrating and keep moving because you did that in football, right?
Right. Yep.
Whoever was next to you on the line or where I don't know what position you played, but whoever was next to you, they were celebrating the
Oh, yeah.
littlest and the biggest, right? Well,
And
that was damn good. That was good.
they
Those are celebrations, right?
correct.
Yeah,
And
good
and
catch. Oh, great, great.
you celebrated together.
Yes.
And now being in life, you have to learn the self-appreciation of celebrating on your own.
And there's nothing more important
Correct.
because once you can celebrate inside yourself, when you ask people to join you, it's magic. It really is.
100%.
Yeah, I love that. What else are you thinking? Anything else?
That really touched a lot of it. Um, the goals and expectations part, I would say, is a huge portion.
Mhm. Good.
Um, Understanding that, I think, would get you to a point in your life where, like you said, your self appreciation is higher,
Mhm.
your stress levels are less,
Mhm.
just due to you're reaching for a goal instead of an expectation.
Right.
Um, and that happens in business a lot. Don't get me wrong. Your boss sets an expectation on you every year. I mean,
Right.
that's how it works. I mean,
Right.
but if you're able to if you're able to comprehend that expectation and turn it into a self-approved goal,
Mhm.
I think you're on the right track to kind of living stress free
Yeah.
and being the type of person that you want to be.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And being the person who you wish to be then ties you back to the identity piece, right?
Correct. Correct.
And don't ever forget that who you were on that football field will always be with you. You don't ever have to say goodbye to that man.
Oh yeah.
And he will always give you great gifts as you go forward. It's just a matter of putting closure to that time.
Mhm.
And it was a loss for you. So putting closure to that time and to that loss and allowing yourself the freedom to step into that new arena and see what it looks like and
Oh yeah.
be willing to embrace change. It can be scary because we like the familiarity of what was, but as we embrace that change and we step into it, and that's really what we've talked a lot about today, walking away, stepping away from an identity, that type of team, that type of life, those expectations and level of expectations into all of this new, and you're doing it.
100%. You know, and I'll add this. There's a quote, and I may not be understanding it the right way, but LeBron James is
Mhm.
a famous basketball player,
I know LeBron
and
James.
he on all of his shoes writes in quotations, "The man in the arena." And the way that I've comprehended that is that you need to understand that you're alone in the arena,
Yes.
but the people are there to watch you and cheer you on.
Right,
So you have to understand, yes, I'm by myself, but I have the goals and I have people behind me to cheer me on and
right,
get me through there.
right, right. Because you are one of 5 men on that basketball field, and especially somebody like a LeBron James or a Jordan, you so much is about the team, but the team is so much about you that you have to be able to balance
Right.
that
And like I said,
entire
I may not
experience.
be understanding that quote the right way, but that's where it touched me.
That's how listen, that's life. You get to understand it your way. Your
Exactly.
perception is your perception. How else are we gonna learn who you are?
Exactly.
Embrace your
100%.
perceptions, they're beautiful, don't ever change them. That's a part of who you are. Yeah. I could really go off on some stories with LeBron James because he has really shown us as an athlete. We talked briefly about identity for you. That poor man, he was so publicly shamed when he left Cleveland the first time, and he persevered and he endured and he held on to that person he is on the inside and made a life for himself in Miami and then made a choice to go back. And still, people were just nasty, and he did it. And he's what an amazing man.
Well, he did a good job of setting goals and not
Yes, he did.
expectations.
Yes, he did. And listening to the experience he wished to have,
Correct.
right? He didn't listen to what he was told he should do. He listened to his heart and did what he knew he needed to do for him and the career he wanted and the
Yep.
path and the achievements he wished to make in his
And
life, and he did it.
that's important in life.
Yeah,
Being able at the end of the day to say that was my decision,
absolutely, absolutely.
and I don't regret it.
Right, right, right. How often we find regrets come from not listening to ourselves.
Correct.
So, yeah, it opens doors. Beautifully said. Yeah, thank you for that. That was very, very beautifully said. Okay, so let me recap, unless you've got one
Yeah.
anything else,
No, let's do
right?
it. Let's do
So
it.
we're talking about leaving a world and a life of football where structure is the name of the game, expectations are the name of the game, and you live to win every day of your life, right? As a team and to build. And so we talked about how quickly you lost that. And so some of the things that have to happen when you shift from that kind of a life to the life you're in now, you want to look at the loss in this case, right? And for a lot of college level players, they're going to feel that because only 1% make it pro. So you
Mhm.
really, there's a lot of men and women out there get to really address that whole piece. But how do I leave that? Well, first we have to feel the loss, and heal that so there's closure to it. Then we step in. We have to realize our identity shifts. It shifts from being an athlete and a player, whatever position you're in and whatever team you're on that football field, you're changing your identity. So you want to then recreate a new identity that fits you in your new position and career, carrying with it a new opportunity to fit into a team in the way that you are going to be comfortable fitting into a team, because the team aspect is also going to be different. And then we also talked, I'm going to forget my third one, which we talked a lot about. Then we talked about the expectations and and the goals. And I think that stood out for you more than anything. And of course, right now, off the top of my head, I'm drawing a blank on the fourth. But those pieces are all so very, very important. You know, the world is different. Oh, when you step from one to the other, the man remains the same. He brings all of those experiences to the table. So setting those goals brings you back to your experiences and away from just listening to what you should be doing by others. So yeah, good job. Really, that was really fascinating. What a great
Well,
topic,
like you said, that actually what you said right there probably encapsulates the man in the arena the best.
right? Right, right. Wow, yeah, right. Cool. I really enjoyed that, Asa. Thank you. That was a great question.
Awesome. I really appreciate you bringing me on today.
You're welcome.
I've enjoyed it. I've
I have
enjoyed it.
too. Yeah, if you ever have any more questions about that and what we talked about, don't hesitate to let me know. That was fascinating.
100%.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our conversation as well. If you have your own questions about what we talked about, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments down below, and I will respond and answer. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you learned a little bit about your own life and creating a world where you set goals and know who you are inside the experience that you're having. And until
I
next
did.
time, may
I
the
did. I
magic
truly
be
appreciate
yours.
it. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Mesa. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you so much for joining me, and please visit KristenBomas.com where you can easily access all of my social circles.